Hey everyone, how's it going? Coming to you from directly in the middle of a sniper scope, it is I, the Dungeon Delver, here on a slightly later than usual Wednesday night. I hope you're all having a wonderful time wherever you are. Good to see you and good to be seen by you. So I apologize for that. My camera was giving me some slight, well, not the camera. It wasn't the camera. It was the power source was giving me a slight problem there. So, but it looks like, nope, I'm still being locked up. There's an echo, Tim says. So let me see if I can fix on that real quick. Let me see here. Shouldn't be an echo. Hey, TXG. But anyway, I hope you're all having an absolutely fantastic evening. So what's going on? What's new? Let's do that. Maybe that's a little bit better. Okay. Tim says it's gone. Good. So, what is happening? Not too terribly much. We had a lot of fun playing first edition AD&D last night, and I want to thank everybody who tuned in and watched that. Kyle, it is Kyle's birthday, by the way. So happy birthday to my co-host Kyle, who is out having a birthday dinner with his daughter. And I think that is an absolutely wonderful thing that he's doing. I'm assuming the whole family is involved. But anyway, so Graph Paper says, I'm not doing a max headroom with lag. You know, funny thing about Max Headroom, that was not computer graphics. That was all done. That was all camera trickery. That was Matt Frewer in very plasticky looking makeup and with, compared to today, very crude tools in post. They would do edit effects on him. The little bit of graphics behind him was done with an Amiga computer, like the weird moving geometric pattern behind him was done with an Amiga 1000 and a Genlock, and that's about as computer graphics as the show got. But anyway, so in just a minute, Dr. Imholt's going to join us, and we're going to talk about something that is kind of near and dear to my heart. And that is managing a big group at the table. And Tim's relevant to this. Well, we'll get there when we get there. And we'll get his input. But tomorrow night, wait, no, I keep thinking that it's Thursday. Just my wife got different days work from home this week and has thrown my schedule off. Mrs. the Dungeon Delver. So tomorrow night we'll find something to deep dive into. We'll find something cool to talk about tomorrow night. And Friday night we're going to play some Gamma World. Now this weekend, I don't know exactly precisely when. I have been invited over to Harmony Ginger's channel, so I'm going to be over there. She's putting me under the interrogation lamp. And then of course next week rolls on. But next week's guest on Thursday at 8 p.m., we will have the one and only Rosa Estes one of the pioneering employees at TSR. She, of course, created the Endless Quest books and so much more. Rose is going to be our guest next Thursday, and I'm really excited about that. That's going to be very, very, very cool. So I'm looking forward to it. Hey, Rich, how are you? So yeah, you guys get this, but there might be some people out there in the audience, whether you're watching this live right now or whether you watch this live stream later, who you're intimidated, whether you're gaming at home online, gaming at a comic store, or gaming at a convention or some other kind of get together. The idea of more than just a few people at the table intimidates you. So without further ado, other than to ask you, please click the like button, click the subscribe button, and the bell icon for notifications if you enjoy this. And thank you all so very much for doing so. Let me don my headphones and invite my esteemed guest. And I don't mean that flippantly, because he is a man definitely worthy of your time. Everybody welcome, please, Timothy Imholt. Tim, how are you this evening, sir?
Good. I was going to have some fun. Instead of putting my name there, put Les Grossman and see if anybody figured it out. But keep pulling the chat. I don't know what that is.
Les Grossman, one of Tom Cruise's best roles.
It's one of the few where he's actually acting.
Yeah, very true. Very true. I really don't want to get into it because I don't want to piss people off, because I know folks have different opinions, but absolutely positively, I will give it to Tom Cruise that the dude, I am absolutely sure if the U.S. Navy wanted to, if they wanted to take the risk of putting him through fighter pilot school, he would have flown that F-18 in Top Gun 2.
He was actually in them. I mean, they were flown by the Blue Angels or somebody, but yeah.
He was in the he was in the backseat, but they gave a full pilot. They built a mock-up front cockpit rig to film him. So I mean, he was back there. If something had gone wrong with that jet, he would have taken the loud handle ride for sure. So the guy is.
Two interesting points on that, because I actually watched both those movies back to back because my kids had never seen the original one. And I firmly believe Top Gun Maverick may have exceeded the original in various ways. It might be a better movie. Tom Cruise knows how to make an action movie. You can't really argue that, right? I mean, the dude knows how to make an action film. But the other thing is that the dude is nuts. I mean, he's just absolutely insane. He must have insurance people going crazy, because how would you like to be the movie that breaks Tom Cruise into three pieces, right? I mean,
he actually wanted to in one of the Mission Impossible movies, he wanted to scale the side of the Burj Khalifa tower. He's like, yeah, I can do that. I'll do that. And they're like, please, Tom, no.
Did you hear the story about that one? It was actually,
no, I didn't.
Actually, Matt Damon told the story about that one on some British talk show. He's like, he was having dinner with Tom Cruise, and he asked him about that stunt. He's like, how'd you get that done? Because I'm not sure how anybody would do it. He goes, okay, so I go to Tom Cruise, like, okay, so I go to my safety guy, and I told the safety guy what I want to do, and the safety guy goes, we can't do that. So I get a new safety guy. I'm like,
yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds about right. But anyway,
okay, you fire the safety. Hey, you from Craft Services, you're now safety. Let me do this, right?
So Tom Cruise can get a lot of people in one place, and another thing that can get a lot of people in one place is a good gaming table. So one of the many reasons that I wanted to have Tim on tonight was a few weeks ago, Tim was lamenting that he really wanted to play Expedition to the Barrier Peaks, and that he was talking to a buddy of his who said he wanted to play, but his friend, and for those of you out there who have played Expedition, you know this to be true, his friend said, yeah, I want to do it, but we got to have a big table. We got to have a lot of people at the table. So I said, yeah, Tim, I'll run that. So Tim's getting a group of his friends and I'm getting a group of my friends. So we're looking at 12 to 13 people at the table. And when I was telling some of the people who were going to be playing with us, they were like, my God, how are you going to do that? And it occurred to me that RPG tables have shrunk precipitously over the years. And I should have been a little bit better prepared for this, but of course I'm not. But in original D&D says a dungeon master can run a campaign with anywhere from 20 to 50 people. Now, 50 is a little bonkers for me. But I have run set piece gaming events, conventions, and so forth with as many as 24 at the table.
I think the question was actually a little deeper than that, right? Because I think I saw that Twitter exchange, and it was like, how do you do it with the distraction of not only that, but cameras and backdrops and questions in chat, right? It's you've got 15 things going on. How do you manage all that? Right? Because I on my channel and on yours, I'm sure you've had people go, well, I don't really want to be on camera. 50, 60 people might see me. It's like, well, yeah, but it's 50 or 60 people live and then hundreds or thousands, after the fact, right? Because even on my channel, some videos have gone to 23, 24,000 views.
Oh, of course. Of course.
So people get nervous about being seen like that. And I think it was a little more than just running a big table. It was running a big table with all this other pressure on it, which is
right.
I think
I think. Well, let's start at the broad outer ring and work inwards towards some of the specificities. And Tim, you were saying in the chat you've put together conferences. By conference, I mean like single event conference, like 1,500 people. So you've wrangled people before. The first thing I can tell you, though, guys, if you are if you are wondering, the main element, whether you are doing it at whatever the event is always keep your players engaged. Never stop moving around the table as you work with people. You have to go. You have to go round robin. The event is a vastly different experience from let's have some friends come over and we'll play D&D for a few weeks, 6 months, a year, 10 years, like I have for my Monday night game, where you can take time and say, that's a good idea. So if your character wants to go do that, that may, you may be out of, okay. So you want to, at a convention, you're keeping plates spinning. So let's say I've got 6 in this direction and 6 in this direction around the table. On any given encounter, whether you're working off of a clipboard with everybody's name on it, or people have a placard in front of them, you are going around the table and you're saying, all right, Tim, the Goblin King says that you'll never leave his underground fortress alive. What do you do? What are you doing for the next round? Okay, Bill, what are you doing for the next round? Mary, Jane, Scott, Joseph, and you go around and you get declarations from everyone at any key moment. You set it up and tell them this. You're going to do this beforehand, but you set it up so that you're going around robin. If someone says, "Oh, gosh, let me look at my spell list. Let me decide if I want to try and cast sleep here. If I want to save that maybe for later in the fight," that's fine. That's fine. If they're the last person you ask, say, okay, just take a few seconds. Is everybody satisfied with their actions? But you just keep that round robin system going. And whether it's 3 people, 10 people, or 24 people, and I'm sure people could do it with larger groups, you are always keeping them engaged. And then when initiative is rolled, everybody is getting a chance to roll the dice, or I'm hiding. I'm digging in my pack for a flask of oil. I'm going to get my wand of illusions out. Everyone has an action, and they state it. No one feels like they've been parked. It's an interesting round robin system that I have found never fails to keep people engaged. Tim, what do you think of that?
I think that's a good way to do it, because especially at conferences or someplace where the players may not have a lot of experience playing together. Because when you have a group that's been together for days, weeks, months, years, right? When they first get together, they're a little less in sync than session 6, right? And if you're doing a conference or something that's new, players may not have ever even been in the same room together, so it can be problematic. And also, conferences are especially tricky because you've got players that might be deeply experienced and players that are brand new. And putting those two things in the same room, some of the new players might have to take advice from some of the older ones and may not like it. Like, I know you want to play with Fireball right now,
right?
But it might not be a good choice, right? So you kind of have to stop certain things from going on. The other thing with some of it is, you have to have a group of people that can sort of not want to like knife each other in the back when there's somebody sleeping, right? So
right.
You do kind of have to make sure, especially at conferences and these one-offs where people are kind of more in sync. And I think that's where before game communication comes in play, where it's like, hey, here's how we're going to run things, right? Here's my plan. Like, let's not learn on the fly. Let's just have 10 minutes where we all sit down and go, here's how I'm going to run the session. And I think that fixes a lot.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I mean, and I think a step 0 perhaps that I missed there, and you hit on, Tim, is absolutely right. And that is telling people this is how we're going to do. And I found that, generally speaking, newer players tend to get helped. You can watch the education happen at events as newer players learn from more experienced players, and they guide them. I find that the con scene, I mean, we've all read RPG horror stories and D&D horror stories on Reddit. 90% of that stuff is engagement bait for Reddit credit, right? I find that people at events are really, really helpful because they want to have fun too. And if the guy who was like, "Oh, a magic user, that sounds cool. I want to be Gandalf," and then they seize up. Well, nobody wants the game to come to a stop. People will be helpful, and they will talk to this person about what to do. Like, oh, you're playing the magic user. Okay, let's maybe write down on note cards real quick spells that would be good, or you're playing a fighter. Just have a D20 and a D10 because you got a long sword. Just have those dice out so you don't have to pick over them, because those are going to be the only ones you need. So as long as you brace everybody for what's going on, you've got the bases there in that outermost ring for a lot of fun, regardless of the externalities that go on. Now, Tim, when you were younger, did you do gaming cons at all?
No, not really. But when I was first out of high school, before I went to college, despite the PhD after my name, wherever it is, it's over there. There it is. I was enlisted, so I went straight to the Army out of high school, and one of the things I always did at different bases when I start to get groups together to play, right? So it wasn't necessarily a con, but it's always like, you've got a new group of people every couple of weeks because people get transferred in and out all the time. But yeah, I wasn't very active in the con session, and honestly, I'm not historically active in the RPG con section just because I have kids and I get busy. So most of the conference experience I have is physics stuff. And to answer the physics question, no, I've never heard of stochastic ooze. I think that's a sci-fi thing. But it to me, it's the con thing, because we've all had sessions where we pull pickup games, right? Because I've been playing since the 80s, and sometimes you're like, hey, a group of us are going to get together this weekend and play, and you never play with that group again. It's kind of the same dynamic, right? Those sort of one-shot games. So, and sometimes you have DMs that are good at it. Sometimes you have DMs that aren't. It just sort of runs the gamut. But one of the things that I'm going to try to push in the next sort of 12 to 18 months personally is take some of those guys that are the eternal DM like yourself and actually get them to play as a player in a game and set the other side of it. Some of them laugh like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm like, I think it's important to get you guys on the other side of the table just because I think it might improve you as a DM to have you as a player once in a while too, to see it from the other side. So, because you'll see things that frustrate you that you don't see when you're the student. You don't see the stuff that you're doing wrong as a teacher. You see it differently. So,
right.
I think it might be interesting to kind of go the other way. But no, I think those games, when you pick those up at cons and when you pick those up at the local game shops or wherever, the sort of one-offs, I think it's interesting because you always learn a lot. Like if you play with the same people for 10 or 15 years, you kind of don't learn much, right? You don't learn anything new. Everybody kind of knows the same lore they've always known unless they go read a new book, but their play style doesn't really alter that much. Whereas if you go play at a game store at a conference, you're liable to pick up something that you didn't ever think about. And one of the things I picked up when I was an active duty, I think it was at Fort Lewis. I was sitting in a game with somebody, and somebody wanted to do one of those things where they played Gandalf or a Hobbit or something. And somebody pulled them aside and goes, dude, this is an RPG. You're allowed to be creative. Make up whatever you want. You don't have to duplicate the shit you've seen, right? You can kind of do something new. And that player that just never really thought about, sort of making up a new one had one of the most fun times at a table I've seen in a long time. So it is nice to kind of sit with those new people and kind of see how other people approach stuff. Because I would have never thought to take the guy aside and be like, oh, you want to be Gandalf? Okay, duplicate what you read in the book, right?
Right.
No, take him a second. No, dude, seriously, here's your shot, right? Be creative.
Right. And I have had a similar, very positive experience. I love telling this story. This is some time ago, 2017, I think. I was down at Gods and Monsters. I was running on Free RPG Day. I was running an event, and there was a guy who's about our age, and he saw me setting up a massive table full of Dwarven Forge, and I have my classic, my stack of classic AD&D books out, and he comes over and he's kind of looking around, and he's like, "Hey, do you mind if I get some pictures?" And I'm like, no, absolutely not. And so he starts telling me how back in the 80s he had wanted to play D&D, and the kids in his school, chess club, whatever, I don't know, they weren't, they didn't want him at the table. And I said, well, cool. Are you here for the store's event? Because Free RPG Day and the store's, I think, second or third anniversary at that point crossed over. And he said, well, yeah. And I said, well, we'll go get some dice and sit down and play. And he said, oh no, I never learned how. I don't know how to play. And I said, well, the easiest way to do it is to do it. So go get some dice and sit down and play. And I mean, I think I caused him to flash back because he had a really mister moment. He went and bought a set of dice. He sat down, this guy, again, our age, 40s or 50s, and played D&D for the first time.
Just one set of dice? That's rookie, man.
I'm sorry?
Just one set of dice? You got it. No, wait.
Just to start.
No, I think it's important. You hit on a very important thing. And I was watching this live stream the other night on a different channel, and I won't mention whose because I don't like calling people out by name that much. I will occasionally do it, but I'm going to be nice for the moment. Which, if you watch me on Twitter at all, you'll know that sometimes is a stretch for me to say that, but I'm going to do it today because Bill doesn't like that sort of thing. But somebody got really, one of the people on this live stream, got really angry because they were an experienced player and they're like, new people have a responsibility. They need to have shown up and have read the player's handbook back to back and this and this and this. And I'm like, That's 250 pages worth of homework for somebody who's never played the game. So nobody's going to do that, right? Somebody's going to, it's always nice to have somebody just be your guide the first time instead of, oh, you want to play? Here, let me give you this 3-week-long homework assignment before you can come play with us, right? That's not a way to welcome people into the community. That's a way to chase people out and kind of be a jerk about it at the same time.
I say, whether someone is playing at a convention or what have you, if you come with an open mind, as this fellow did, you will absorb as you go. All I ask is that people set aside preconceived notions. And most conventions, so nascent game masters out there, if you haven't done the con scene and you're a little nervous about it, most conventions in their sign-up sheets, whether they're online or it's a note card you fill out at the con, they will have a section for level of experience. So if you want to filter people out who have never played first edition AD&D or have never played Classic Traveler or have never played 5th edition or have never played Vampire the Masquerade or whatever, there's a level of experience required, and none, some, familiarity, and you can go familiar with the rule systems. But I especially at Free RPG Day, where you are trying to grow the hobby, if you're running events at Free RPG Day, or if that's what you should be doing, I tend to shut that filter off. All I ask is the people who come to the table are there to play D&D. Whether you embrace the chaotic stupid and say, I'm never going to play AD&D again, but I'm going to play it today and I'm going to have a good time with it. Or you leave the table ready to go to Drive Through RPG and get every classic book reprinted. All I ask is that those folks come ready to play and set other externalities aside.
So that's an important thing. And I will say this, when I first started talking to Bill, I hadn't played in a while, and now I'm actually dungeon mastering my kids and dungeon mastering another group locally. Which was one of those moments of I haven't DM'd in forever. So for me to first do it, I'm like, okay, it's been a while, right? And I'll tell you, I'll be honest, I'm DMing 5th edition, which actually is a little bit easier than DMing 1st edition because it's more rule lawyery in ways. So there's not really a lot of questions that come up. DMing 1st edition is a little different because there's a lot of things that are left to interpretation. 5th edition doesn't really do that, which is where I think 5th edition kind of lacks in ways because it doesn't allow you to have as much imagination. It's more dictatorial. Sure. And we'll leave the rest of the edition wars out of that. But my point is that and yes, it's live, whoever just asked that. The point is that, when you sit down to do these DMing things, one of the very few things I ever tell people, and I didn't have to worry about it with kids, was the only thing I ask as a dungeon master is to please leave modern day politics at the door. I don't give a shit about it, and it doesn't belong in a Dungeons and Dragons game. If you want to make up a political system between the thieves and the wizards, okay, that's fine. But it at least needs to kind of fit within the game. But modern day, whatever politics you want to try to inject, I have absolutely no space for it at a table, and I've never asked anybody to leave, but I came close one night.
Well, and that you bring up an interesting point. I am seeing some questions from you guys, and I definitely want to open up the field for these a little bit. But Orbital Air asks, have I ever gotten one of those nightmare players you read about, and how do you handle them? I'm a firm believer in the 3-strike system. Sometimes what is perceived as a nightmare player is a simple matter of too much enthusiasm. It's people who are dipping their toes into an RPG for the first time, maybe at your table, and they want to be everywhere and they want to be doing everything. And sometimes, if you just take them aside, hey, let's just remember, we're round robin, or, that's, you have limitations as your class and so on. And, you just sit there and they'll chill out. Okay, gotcha.
Well, so I think also remember a lot of those nightmare players you hear about. So step away from this for a second. I own and operate a company that specializes in pulling data off of social media for various reasons. Things that are on social media may not reflect reality.
Oh, most definitely.
So if you see a story on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, divide by 10, and that's probably closer to the truth, especially if it's one of those nightmare scenarios. But the only time I ever had a truly nightmare scenario is probably back in like 93, 94 range, where somebody who'd never played before insisted on being a Magic user. And I kind of let them do it because I was the DM. And since then I've learned a valuable tool. If you're a first-time player, if you're a DM who has a first-time player, have them be a fighter. It's just a whole lot easier for them to kind of figure out the rules and obligations of it, as they can see other people be Magic users or clerics or paladins or some of these other things that have a little more rigor. You know, a fighter's a lot easier. You just tell them, look, you're a murder hobo for hire. You know, that's it, right? And it usually clears it all up. So.
Yeah. You know, all you have to do is cast sword.
Throw dagger. Yeah.
So, but in talking about the externalities, and still focusing on the in-person event, but we'll get to other potential distractions. When you're at a convention, even a small convention, like, for example, I went to the Lake Geneva gaming conventions, which were held just so Gary would have a local con to go to. In the last few years he was with us. The Troll Lords, God bless them, they arranged those in Lake Geneva. They were very like the earliest of Gen Cons. But I remember the first one I went to, I would say there were probably about the same number of people in the map room of the Cove Hotel of Lake Geneva as there are in the live chat here. And you think, okay, 25 people, that's it. Maybe it was more. Maybe, I'm sure there were more people attending the con in the overall, but when we were there, we stepped in. There's 25 people in a moderately sized meeting room. And I was struck by how loud it was. The acoustics in the room were such that everybody's voice was bouncing off the walls and then bouncing off another wall. And then, of course, other people had to raise their voices to be heard. So the din was fairly considerable. Now, this kind of goes person to person, because you can't stand on your DM's chair and yell, "Shut up," at a room full of other players.
Well, you can.
You can. You get asked back to the con. You might go home right then, depending. But you shouldn't. Let me say that. You shouldn't. But the best advice I can give you under those circumstances, if it's people talking, and particularly if you have a tremendous layout of miniatures or classic RPG books, somebody's going to want to stop and take a picture. Maybe somebody's friend walks by and they want to get a quick selfie at the table with both of them, whatever.
I've actually had people, I don't know if you've had this or not, I've had people DM me on Twitter and ask for pictures of certain things inside this version, which is weird to me, because you can get it off Drive-Thru RPG for nothing, right? It's really cheap. But so you're right, people look at that older stuff like with this nostalgia, like, ooh, can I get my picture taken with the book? I'm like, it's not a rare book, but sure.
Yeah. I learned very quickly, because of enthusiasm, never outright thievery. Leave the super rare stuff at home.
That's true. Yeah.
Just a good travel copy of original D&D, not your OD&D white box set with the autograph by Gary and Dave in it. Let that one stay at home on a shelf. Be a little bit of a collector. But I would do PDF on travel, but that's just because I hate carrying luggage. No, I got you. But if you're like me, like blew out my ears with 26 concerts in the space of about 18 months when I was in college. So I'm a little hard of hearing. That might be
was one of them AC/DC?
Yes.
Okay, then it's okay.
One of them was AC/DC, one of them was Pink Floyd, two of them were Rush. I could go on, but
so my dad used to schedule business trips around Pink Floyd concerts.
Good man, smart man.
Took me years to figure that one out.
So if you're in a particularly loud con space, just make sure, and this is a good practice anytime, home, comic shop, gaming store, convention space, a pack of note cards and a nice bold pen. I had a player at GaryCon 2018 who he was legally hearing impaired. He wore a hearing aid. He clipped his Bluetooth microphone to my Game Master screen. As I sat there, he could hear me better. But there were times when there were people across this, it's an event table, so it's like a 12-foot diameter circular table. When I would get up and I'd have to walk around and say, "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?" So I could hear what people could say. That's something else, and it goes back to the first thing about staying engaged with players. Guys, don't get comfortable in that chair. If you're a DM and you have a big group, get ready to be walking around. Get ready to spend your 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 hour slot doing a lot of walking around, particularly if you have a large group. You're going to get a workout. Wear comfortable shoes. Wear your sneakers to the con. There's a bit of advice. Wear your sneakers to the con. So you move around the table if you can't make out what someone's saying, or if if they're pointing at something, they're like, "No, over there," just go over and get their point of view at what they're looking at on the map. So Dirty History and Hobby says first player to die becomes assistant DM. Is my mic level slowly decreasing? I don't think so. Everything seems to be okay. I'm not seeing.
Check your meds.
Check. Yeah, you're gonna have to check your meds on that one. Tim and I say, no, I am still peaking on voice meter. I'm still redlining on voice meter. So it may be when I turn my head away.
Oh yes, Graph Paper Architect brings up a good point. At cons, always wear good shoes and please your God wear deodorant.
Yes, good shoes and deodorant. If you have 24 people at the table, you don't want to be that one DM that gassed everybody out, do you?
So let me give. Okay, so after speaking of cons, and that brings up a point that's slightly outside of RPGs, but I want to bring something up to people who are thinking about conventions. I used to do a lot of cons when I was still working at the university side, and it was always physics conferences. And it was always funny to me that when I first started, the professor I was sort of underneath, he would get to go to all the conferences in Paris and London, and I'd get like El Paso, right? But yeah, it's like amazing how that worked, right? But
You're
as I
taking
gained
a foreign country, oh great, where is it? Juarez. Oh no.
But University of Texas El Paso, right? Somebody had to go, and I would fly and then drive, and anyway. But as I gained seniority and I had some notoriety for a bit when I was still working on the nanotechnology side, I got a chance to go to the Paris Air Show. I got a chance to do other stuff, but it was always, you're going to the Paris Air Show to give us talk and do these other things. If you're going to a con, even if it's a gaming con and it's a city you've never been in, fly in a day early. Experience the city. Go out and have lunch. Don't have lunch at the hotel. Have lunch at some mom and pop hole in the wall place, and just sort of have fun in that city. If it's only going to add an extra day for you and one extra night hotel, just do it. Because I've managed to spend like an extra day in 30 different cities thanks to work travel, and it maybe cost me a very small fraction of the trip because I'd have to pick up one night at a hotel or something. But if you're going to cons, just schedule a little extra time. And the other reason for that is you never know when you're going to hit an airport delay. and if you're flying in morning of and you got a gaming session you want to be at that afternoon, you hit the airport and all of a sudden you're 3 hours delayed. Well, you just missed. Oh, you can't meet Joe Manganiello because he's now busy, right?
Exactly.
Or whoever you want to meet. Rose Estes, Margaret Weiss, right? Their signing session is over and you've missed the opportunity. So get there a day early. It does wonders for you.
And I think, away from the table, if you're going to be at a convention, do absolutely build buffer time in if that con is going to be something you're going to want to experience other than just, look, I just showed up and ran a game. Like, I want to go to the dealer's hall. There's a great nature park in this town that I've heard about. I'd like to hike. Absolutely give yourself time. And that kind of brings something back more into line with the gaming. As much as you, the DM, have a large group and you're keeping them focused, you stay focused too. It's a little less onerous if you have a smaller group, a little less. But there's people, like I mentioned Lake Geneva Gaming Convention. There was a young man who he played in my original D&D game I ran in 06. He was in Lake Geneva from Iraq. He was a U.S. soldier, and he had been given like I don't know, like 3 weeks, 4 weeks of furlough basically before he had to. And so he came back to the United States. He was a gamer. He knew about Gary, and decided he wanted to go to LGGC and play original D&D. Insofar as I'm a storyteller, and you guys have watched my live streams. And sometimes I'll pause for a brief moment and tell a funny anecdote or something like that. If you're at a convention and you have a large group, please, 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 for the sake of your players, remain focused. The funny story is great to tell after the fact, but if you have 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20 people at the table, stopping every few minutes to do the Knights Who Say Knee, or this one time me and my friend Bob were playing basic D&D, and it was the Keep on the Borderlands, and the owl bear hugged a guy to death, and you go into this ramble, and it's great to you, and maybe even some other people at the table are enjoying it, but with a large group, you're going to end up freezing some people out.
Yeah,
they'll stop listening to you.
And I think the other thing, and I think Harmony brought this up on your feed, is when you're trying to manage those large groups, and some people do start to wander off mentally and look at things and do something else, you do have to figure out a way to politely kind of snap them back in. Because otherwise it just delays the whole game. So you've got to keep people focused. You got to keep it entertaining. You got to keep it moving. And the only way to do that is to really keep the tempo up, right? So if you get distracted, they're going to get distracted, and it just snowballs into craziness.
Tempo. Anyone here who's a fan of football knows that when your team has the ball, the way to win is tempo. Never give the other side a chance to relax. It's the same at the gaming table. Let your players have fun, but let it be a constantly engaged fun, and keep that tempo going. Yeah. For a large group, it's absolutely key.
So Dungeon Minister brought something up. Same goes for players, right? Please don't spend 3 to 4 hours you have to play telling us about your high school musical. So let's take that a little bit different and apply it to the game, right? So I was playing with a group once, and somebody showed up with and they even kind of made fun of it in the Dungeons & Dragons movie. Somebody showed up with this extensive backstory they wanted to read. And, it's like, okay, we're not doing that. And every once in a while you'll get somebody who wants to role play shopping for an hour and a half. Right. And one of my kids' friends did that, where they were like, I'm going to bargain with this shopkeeper, and we're going to do this forever. So I had a random encounter, a not so random encounter occur when a creature busts into the shop and destroys your shopping trip. Right. So, you're right. Players do have a tendency to do that in and out of the game, but you got to get creative and find ways to bust it up. And as a DM, that's part of your. So as a DM, I don't really view my job as to control the story or control the narrative. I offer a framework or an outline of a story, and using I almost never do homebrew. Right, I always use some pre-done adventure because I've got like 60 of them. But it to me, it's not my job to say, okay, well, you have to go up this hallway and turn right, or it just falls apart, right? My whole job is to give them sort of an outline to work from, and let them kind of do their own thing. And the further you get away from them doing their own thing and you being dictatorial, it gets kind of not fun for them anymore. So it's my job to kind of be the referee, not necessarily the guy who dictates the story. But by the same token, if somebody tries to take over the story, I reserve the right to have an owlbear accidentally come around a corner.
Just so. And that brings up something else. There's 2 points I want to touch on as far as being a dictator. DMs. As much as we might like to, particularly in a large group, slapping cell phones out of people's hands is not a choice. Politely asking folks to stay off their phones unless they have a PDF of the rule book and that's what they're looking at. But if somebody's like obviously on Insta or Twitter or whatever, no matter how engaged you make those people or try to make those people, that just may be their equivalent of a cigarette stuck in the mouth or fiddling with what have you. It doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad DM. Unfortunately, social media is pervasive, and they might be tweeting about you. They might be saying, hashtag awesome game, hashtag Tim Imholt's a great DM or whatever. But when it comes to when it comes to the externalities like that.
So like Injun Joe says, no phones to the table. And sentimentally, I agree with you, but like I'm 52 years old and have 2 teenagers and an 11-year-old. Realities are if I get a night away and they're home alone or with somebody, I'm going to need to be gettable, right? I can't.
Yeah.
And as a single dad, I don't really have that choice, right? And as a business owner, and the reality is we live in a world where people are going to have to be connected in some fashion. And I would love to be at a table where no phones are allowed and we're all in the game. But if you've got a good enough session going, you've got good enough players, you got a good enough DM, people aren't going to spend a whole lot of time here. They're hopefully going to be involved in the game. So in principle, I agree with you, but in practice, it's really hard to achieve.
Something else that can help people stay off of their phones and be heads up, not heads down, is pre-gens. Guys, if you have a large group, I mean more than just a few, and everybody's a veteran, and you've vetted their characters, pre-gens are a must at a convention. You've got 12 people. Even if you're playing original, I don't care if you're playing Dragons of Under-Earth, which has 2 stats for each character. You don't have time to generate characters. Would it be fun to bring Sir Robert the Bold into the game and hear his 3 or 4 sentence backstory? Sure, but if everybody at the table does that, then you've just killed 12 players, 3 minutes apiece. There's over a half an hour of the game gone right there. Pre-gens. Moreover, you, the DM, will know what each player does and doesn't have for equipment, spells, and magic items. Pre-gens are a lifesaver.
And that's one of the reasons I actually like some of the pre-written modules, especially the older ones, is they almost always came with pre-generated characters that were kind of right for that level module, right? So if people showed up and they didn't have their favorite player, well, here, take this one, right? Use that because he's kind of pre-gen for this level. He's balanced, he's got equipment, he's ready to go. He doesn't have to go shopping for an hour and a half, right? It just sort of comes ready to fly. So everybody loves to do homebrew, and I think that's great. I just, it's not realistic for me just based on careers and time and whatever else I'm doing. So I like those pre-done ones. And the other reason, and I know some people love homebrew, but the challenge with a homebrew, especially at a convention or with somebody who might be new, is if you haven't play tested it, you never know where you might miss where there's like a hole that characters can get into and can't get out of. Something might be unbalanced. It could be all kinds of problems with your module if you haven't really play tested it. And the advantage to the pre-done ones is they're all play tested already. And you're right. First E, Dragonlance was horribly unbalanced, and Raceland pulled off some amazing, dice throws to stay alive. But and I'm convinced somebody would have killed that Kender along the way. But the only person I've ever seen do a video or talk on, it wasn't a video, it was like some podcast or something. The only thing I've ever seen about doing Kender correctly and playing a Kender correctly was probably Margaret Weiss was giving a talk. Most people just use them as kleptomaniacs. And I don't think that's correct. And somebody mentioned Dragonlance. So Bill is very anti-Kender as a dungeon master. He hates them, and I think it's because people play them wrong. As a dungeon master, I kind of like them, but I try to coach people on how to play them, and I use the words of Margaret Weiss to coach them. At the beginning of the game, she tells the dungeon master, take one thing from every player. Don't tell them or me what it is, but put it in my pack. And the moment they need it, nobody knows where it is, including me. So, like, that's a cute way to do it, right? Then they're not just pure kleptomaniacs. You actually are just the forgetful Kender that happened to put something in your pack. And I was like, that's kind of a neat way to do it. But it's Margaret, so you would assume that she would kind of have that down. But
sure. So we've talked about the at table things, the things that you can more or less control. Stay engaged with all your players, have pre-gens, make eye contact. I know that sounds a little weird, but if you're constantly doing, like, I watch videos of myself. I don't like my streams. I don't like the sound of my voice. I don't like my videos, but sometimes when I do, and I see that I'm looking down, like, I want to go back in time and smack myself in the back of the head. Stay engaged with your players. Make that eye contact and let them know that they're important and you're listening to what they have to say. Because a lot of times that can clear up. It's you want to go left? Oh, no. You want to be left in the rear of the. I got you. Okay, all right. You just
orbital air. You're right about that. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's okay. But the next kind of the next step in is the matter of virtual DMing, and Tim hit on this back at the beginning of our discussion. But you have something, Tim. You're bursting to say. What do you got?
I am. When you mentioned pre-gens, I looked before I showed up online. I've had this thing forever. It's the Rogues Gallery. Okay, it's nothing but a ton of pre-generated characters.
Absolutely.
I've had it since the dawn of creation, I think. But I checked, and on eBay they're like $20. If you want to go with pre-gens and you want to just have a variety of levels and a variety of classes, this thing's a bargain. It's got everything under the sun in it. And if you don't want to have to take the time to make them, there it is. You got a whole bunch of them.
It is an exceptionally handy thing. Something else that I have found, and I've talked about this, I've preached the gospel of this for a long time. Find a copy. I know this term it doesn't mean anything legally, but it is basically abandonware. The Dungeon Master's Assistant Volume 2. Run it through DOSBox, and you can create characters like that. If you don't have the Rogues Gallery, and the adventure doesn't have pre-gens, you can use Dungeon Master's Assistant. But speaking of computers, so I'll be running this game for Tim and friends, and I run a game on Monday night for friends. It'll be 12 people, and it'll all be online. And I know a lot of people think like 6 to 8 is a huge party. And that what constitutes a huge party is entirely up to you. I'm not going to sit here and say, pleb, you only run, you only run 3 people. It's amateur. No. Where you find your watermark is entirely up to you. As far as players being shy about cameras, I can't think of a single application. Like, for example, I can do this. I can stop cam, and then that's all you see. I could be picking my nose, scratching my butt, doing whatever. Most meeting applications have a mode that lets you just join by voice only. Now, if somebody doesn't want their voice on screen, they can go text, but that's going to slow things up a little bit. In those cases, if you have a moment, maybe discuss with them, like, hey, maybe you can set the software and only I'm hearing you, or what have you.
You're right, but I actually played with somebody once who had a speech impediment, and that would actually fix that very quickly, right? It would actually make it a lot easier for them to play using something where they can actually type.
Definitely. In those cases, that can be very helpful. But if you're doing a virtual event, don't insist people turn their cameras on. When I run stuff at the Guac, I always tell people, you don't have to turn your camera on. Just be in the Discord and let me hear that beautiful voice of yours, and that will do just fine. Or again, as Tim says, if there's a case where you just want to type, if everyone else is in the voice chat and they have their little windows up, I'll see your message and I'll say, Tim said he is going to check for traps. Tim, as you approach the door, it bursts open and you're crushed by an owl bear. Just for example, not that would happen.
No, I've never been crushed by an owl bear this week. Almost.
That's never happened this week.
I had a run-in with a wyvern, but not a.
Yeah, and it wasn't even you that got poisoned by the wyvern.
I know, it was kind of nice.
So the lights, the speaker, the cameras, all that sort of stuff. This dovetails into the why I started the Delver's Dungeon. I called it crazy gibberish because it was pretty shambolic, more so than this one is, if you folks can believe that. Because when human malware infected the planet, I saw my fellow gamers, I was seeing people post online saying, my night out every week was going to game with my friends, and now I can't. I'm basically marooned in my apartment, I or my house, or I can't do the social things. And I said, wait a minute. At that point, my Monday night game was 6 years old. We have voice and video on the Monday night game down to a science. So I came out and I said, this is how you do it. Now I have studio lights. I've got 2 lights on each side. I've got a DSLR up there. I've got this. I've got the streaming computer. I've got the boom, the blah, blah. You don't need this. Even for a large group, you need some way to reliably connect to the internet. That's it. Is all this stuff nice? Absolutely. But don't think that because you have a large group that you have to have all this stuff, or that this stuff's going to become a distraction.
So, I mean, let's put it another way, right? You were talking about playing an RPG, and people are worried, and I've heard this too. Oh, I have to have a microphone. I have to have this. I run a software company with more than 60 engineers now. Most days I'm working from a MacBook Pro. So I'm using the Zoom, the camera and the microphone on the MacBook to run, a decent sized engineering group. When I was, before I started my own company, I worked for a variety of people, including universities. And I would do remote meetings with just telephone, running an upgrade on the battle manager to the Patriot missile program. So if we can do that just by telephone and emailing slides across, It ain't hard. You know, what's on it's just a regular old Chromebook these days.
Right.
You need a dice roller, which can be found at, was it DDDdice or something.com?
DD Dice. Yeah, DD Dice.
DD Dice, and you can use the free version of StreamYard, and you're off and running.
Yeah. 10 people, or Discord. You
Discord.
can use Discord, and it has dice rolling bots built into it. So
it doesn't have to be expensive. Nobody has to be out $30 a month. You could do it for pennies.
Definitely not. I will say that if you're bold, if you're being bold, and you've said, by golly, if that Bill Sylvie can run 24 people at a table, I certainly can. Some connectivity services, the free versions, have a cap on the number of people that can be in your meeting. So just be aware of that and choose accordingly. Now, Orbital Air asked a question here. Pointers and tips for better online games. There's a lot of thought and science that's been put into virtual tabletops. I don't cotton with them because, for me, that's another layer of interference between me and my players. Discord has a fantastic radio built into it. The voice and the video in Discord are great. If you have a stable connection, 5 to 10 megabits even, or if your phone is 5G, I plug it into an external power source.
So the one thing I would tell everybody, and Bill, I think you're going to miss it. Let me add there. You and I do the same thing. I spend so much time on Zoom and everything else every day.
Mm-hmm.
I gave up on wireless headphones. Get an inexpensive wired studio headset.
Yes.
Because it never has dead batteries ever.
Yeah. Good point, Tim. Thank you very much. Now I use a desktop mic because at the time when I thought I would be streaming tabletop RPGs, and I'm talking like 2014. Yeah, 2014. I remember it well. I got the blue snowball that this mic replaced.
Oh, yeah, and I've got the snowball somewhere.
And I got this boom because I couldn't have it sitting over here and talk to you guys, and it wouldn't balance anywhere else. So yeah, I did get a microphone boom. But if you're not, even if you are doing this, I mean, AirPods have a mic built in. You can get a cheap lavalier mic and plug it into your PC. And for headphones, I mean, yeah, I have these $60 AKG phones, but it's earbuds. You don't have to break the bank for just a few dollars. You can be ready to go.
So the other thing I would tell people is I spend so much time on these things, and I've gone through so many headsets over the years. If you're going to do this, you're going to do it seriously. AKG or one of the others that have metal as this part of the headphone will save you having to buy new headphones over and over, because a lot of the plastic ones crack and fall apart very quickly. Yeah. And the AKGs might be a little more expensive, but they're still sub $100. They come with a 25-foot extension cable, and man, this thing could get run over by a truck, and I'm pretty sure it would still work.
Yeah, I have dropped, tripped over, knocked over my AKGs. I think when I bought these, I got them like on one of those flash sales, like buy them now and they're 15% off, and shipped. They were like $54. And I've had friends of mine who are pro musicians say, "Oh wow, yeah, AKGs is all we use for listening in the booth." Yeah. So, and these are good headphones.
And the Audio Technica microphone is like $40, and it picks up from. It's got such good noise canceling. You probably can't hear my kids that are running around all over the place here.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely. So regardless of the size of your table, the technology really, really does not impinge, and just soothe those players who are, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be on no. You're going to be on a conference call. Just Just when it comes up and says use voice and video, use voice only, just select use voice only. We'll hear your dulcet voice. Or again, if you run into a situation where they are literally mortified of even hearing their voice on stream, you can absolutely, whether you're on Zoom, whether you're on StreamYard, whether you're on Discord or what have you, they can type. Will it slow down a larger group? Yes, but odds are it's not going to slow them down as much as you think. Because if we go back to the 12-person example, and we're going around the table, we're starting with Tim and we're ending with Lee over here and 10 people in between. You have to go in order. And if Lee can't make up his mind, you're sitting waiting on Lee. But in a situation where you have 12 people on Discord and Lee is one of them, if Lee can make up his mind, but he has to type, just make sure he's the last person you ask and be conscientious of the fact that he might be typing away. He might be like I was. I used to program on my Commodore 64 with the 2 fingers until I took a typing class. He might be hunting and pecking. And you can give him a little bit of extra time. And one of the beautiful things about a virtual convention setup like that is I have found, generally speaking, in 2020, I GM'd 6 games at Virtual GaryCon. And with one exception, all of my tables, I'd say, okay, guys, we're coming up on the 4-hour mark. We're not done with the scenario. Let's, do you guys want to call it here? Everybody said, let's just keep going, because you didn't have a table to vacate. There wasn't a group of people standing around with their bags full of D10s and their Vampire the Masquerade rulebooks glowering at you because, damn it, they're on table L53 at exactly 4 p.m. and it's 3:57 and you're still narrating the battle. So if you're going to tackle a large group, maybe a virtual con might be the first place you'd want to try that. So that's just a little bit of advice that I would give about the cameras and so on. At things you've run, regardless of their gaming cons or not, Tim, have you anything to add to that?
No, I think the biggest part for me is, running ones around here is to kind of get, for cons are great and online is good too, but especially if you're going to do something online with VTTs or you're going to do it over, people spread out all over the country. Because I have people reach out to me on Twitter once in a while because I've got 12,000 something followers now, and others saying, how do I find a group? Well, it's tougher and tougher as the world evolves to find local groups. You still can. It's not impossible. But by and large, most people, just based on life, it's gonna be virtual, just because that's kind of the way society is right now. Get used to that being the first option. If you can find a local one, great. But the one thing that I find most effective groups that are going to be long lasting do is let's have a quick 30-minute. Let's everybody get together and introduce themselves before we sit down to play, and have that kind of, hey, this is Susie, she's going to play this. This is Bill, he's going to play that. Here's, as a dungeon master, what I'd like you to show up with as far as a character. Do you need help generating something? How can we kind of all get on the same page before the first game session? Mm-hmm. And that way your first game session isn't spent doing all that prep work. And as a dungeon master and an avid gamer, and somebody who's trying to decide whether or not I'm going to retire in the next couple of years. My kids beg me not to because they think I'll annoy them more. But they're probably right. I don't mind doing those sorts of things 2 or 3 times. So if people can't get all together, you want to have, one little discussion with your fighters, another one with the magic user and cleric and whatever, that's great. or experienced players versus not experienced players. But I think communication before the game is important to having a successful kind of get together that first time. And if I have to spend 5 or 10 minutes with each person, I don't know about you, but I don't mind doing it. Right?
No, I don't. If I know it's going to be medium, even if it's just going to be a few sessions, like I know this group, and you can do that at a convention. You can have, if your module is really long, but it's really cool and it's really popular and lots of people want to play it, you can run part 1 on Friday, part 2 on Friday night, and part 3 on Saturday. Sometimes you can have a campaign. And in those cases, taking a session 0 with your players is feasible, even with a large group, as Tim indicates.
Yeah, especially if you're going to do one of the complicated ones, right? So all over Twitter all day, the Dungeons and Dragons Twitter feed has been talking about their re-release of this guy right here, the Expedition to Barrier Peaks, the one we're going to be running before too long. This is not a low-level nothing module, right? This is an adventure for 8 to 12. If you don't go in it with 8 or 9 characters at level 8 and above, you're looking at a very potential total party killed, third corner you turn around.
Yeah.
So getting organized beforehand matters, and making sure that larger group is kind of on the same page also matters. And you can run through something like that in sort of 3, 4, 5 sessions if you're really on point and really trying to do things right. But if you're taking your time and really role playing it correctly, so that's the other thing. So let's think about this for a second. When I was in the Army and you had a couple of weekends to play with people before they got shipped off someplace, you were playing with reservists or whatever, you'd only be with people around the gaming table 2 or 3 times. And the same with cons, right? So there's a difference in play style when you play at a convention versus when you're not. Can you go through Expedition at Barrier Peaks on speed mode and do it in three evening sessions? You can do something, right? Is it the full up adventure? Because doing the full up adventure on this could be 8 players across 50 hours of gameplay. If you really do it properly. So I think as a DM, you have to balance those. You have to play juggle, right? It's am I doing this on speed mode or am I doing this? It's like the old Doom video game, right? Am I doing God mode or am I doing beginner wimpy mode, right? 2 entirely different things. So you have to really kind of balance those, and it's tricky to do, but with a little bit of experience, it's possible. And the other thing to remember is especially at a con or if you're playing with new people, don't be nervous. It's just a game. Everybody's going to have a good time. That's really the whole point to it, is to have a good time. And as a dungeon master, if you don't know something and a player goes, "Hey, you forgot about this," don't get all mad about it. Just say, "Oh shit, I did," and move on. Right. Right. Because you might wind up with players more experienced than you are. It just happens. But the game styling is different when you get to a con. And somebody brought it up earlier. You might have a total of 3 hours to play, and you're not going to get through this whole thing in 3 hours. But can you get through enough of it? You can have some fun.
And that's that's something very important to know. Most of the modules, even if they don't include a scoring system or the original tournament system, will note, this was originally released as a tournament module for Gen Con 13. And the goal back then at a con was not to get through the module. It was to see how far through the module you could get.
Okay, and let's be honest, it was to get you to buy it.
It was to get you to buy it. Exactly. You're sitting there, you just played this crazy module about elves who have dark skin and they're controlling giants, and I want some of that. So you're going to run out with your $6 and buy all 3 of those giants modules at the TSR vending booth right outside Horticultural Hall. That's how you're going to do it. And that's the way they wanted to do it. And the point was not to, to give you a little taste, but as your players go, as you have a large group, if you want a complete adventure and you're only going to have 1 session, it is not bad to have a few cool encounters and a minimal of actual dungeon crawling. Because if you get into, okay, now I know you all have pre-gens, but let's start rolling for random encounters while you spend 3 days traveling to the dungeon across 3 different terrain hex types. Just a second, guys. No. Then you get back into your wasting people's time. Be succinct, especially if you have a large group. You are standing outside the caves of chaos. There's cave openings here, and here. Which cave opening are you guys going in? Go straight for it. Be succinct with a large group, and be patient when players stall. The last bit of advice I've got, and unfortunately, Tim, when he's talking about doing conferences and that sort of thing, this isn't really an option. But don't take it as a knock to your pride to start with a smaller group and work your way up. I didn't start running D&D games at cons and say, I got 14 openings, everybody join up. I started with 6, then 8, then I did 8 for a little while, and then I got bold and said there's 10 openings, and then there's 14, and then I did 16, and 8 more people showed up and said, your game is pretty awesome, and you got all this Dwarven Forge. Can we play too? Absolutely. Give me a few minutes, and I, hand out some more pre-gens. So don't be afraid to start with a small group and work your way up to a big group. But in all, if you just follow the advice that Tim and I have thrown out there for you, regardless of the group size, running it's going to be a snap.
Yeah, it's like anything else. The first time you do it, it's like first time you got behind the wheel of a car, it was kind of scary, right?
Right.
I was really having fun. I don't think my dad was having nearly as much fun as I was having. But I've even had that experience now with my son. You get over it pretty fast, right? So if you haven't ever DM'd before and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't do it, do yourself a favor. Do not put yourself up against the Critical Role guys and go, oh my gosh, I have to be that good. Don't do it. It's not realistic.
Thank you so much, Tim, for mentioning that.
One of the best dungeon masters I've ever seen portrayed fictionally, and it's somebody who I would love to have a game. If you watch season 1 of Stranger Things, yeah, that kid DMing the Demogorgon section, I'm like, that's a good DM. He's solid, right?
I loved Will's style. I'm a big fan of Stranger Things myself. Eddie is my spirit animal, but Will was a great DM. Yes,
but Eddie's sort of like a very solid DM. He's that's sort of what that would be high end DMing, right?
Yes.
The guys on Critical Role are I won't say scripted, but they're at least outlined long beforehand.
Scripted. Sorry, Tim, please.
Yeah, they may not be scripted, but it's really close. It may allow for improv, but it's at least got a general, here's what's going to happen. But I think don't put yourself up against those ones you see in movies or TV, because Will Byers was aces, man. He was one of the best I've ever seen play. Eddie later on is fantastic as a DM, but again, he's fictional, right? He got 27 takes to get it right. Really want to see a DM, go to the local game shop or watch some of this Bill streaming. You'll see what real DMing looks like more often than not. It's just different, right? And you don't have to be, a professional voice actor to do it. Sometimes slipping in a few character traits is a little bit nice, but especially if you're playing NPCs, it's nice, especially when trying to extract information. Like my dad, when I started playing, he was the DM. He used to, if you wanted to extract information, my thought, my dad would always be tricky about it. Oh, you go into this new town, you're trying to find something. Let's go talk to a guard. Dad wouldn't have the guards tell you anything. The only way you could get something out of it was going down to the local tavern and buying people beer, right? Because
he had the right of it.
he's exactly right. In real life, you don't get it from the cops, right? You get it from the local bar.
Right. Or you do get it from the copies when he's out of uniform at the local bar.
At the local bar, right? So, those sorts of quirky things I think are more fun to do as a DM. And you don't have to give the players an easy one, right? You don't have to give them a layup and like, oh yeah, the guards will tell you everything for 10 silver.
Right.
Not always the way it works. So
I do want to answer this question, and if you guys have got any questions, I think I've given about the best advice I can on running large group at cons. So if you guys have any questions, I need to, I probably at the bottom of the hour will wrap up, but I will do my best, and I'm sure Tim will do his best to answer them depending on who you direct them at. But the Roost asks, how long does it take me to make all the pre-gens? Using the Dungeon Master's Assistant, and there's always stuff that I want to tweak. Let's say I do have that group where I'm expecting 10, so I'm going to make 12 pre-gens because somebody's going to be like, can my girlfriend play? Or, for whatever reason, you just wind up with other players, or can my boyfriend play? Or, hey, I brought my 2 kids with me. Can they play? So for AD&D, the Roost, and this is what I can address, because this is really where I live. For AD&D, I would say 12 characters is maybe, with the Dungeon Master's Assistant program, the Dungeon Master's Guide in PDF open in my other monitor and everything like that, probably about an hour. I've gotten up on the morning of events that I've run locally and realized, crap, that's what I was going to do before I went to bed. I was going to make characters. Well, let's see, what time is it? The game is at noon. It's 8 o'clock now. I've got plenty of time, because I know it'll take me 45 minutes or an hour to make up the pre-gens, print them out, and be good to go. So that's it depends on the number of pre-gens. If you roll that back, and I know I'm only going to have 4 people at the table, solid for sure, well, that might only take me 10 minutes, So using Dungeon Master's Assistant, or grabbing a resource like the Rogues Gallery will not take very long. Rolling them up, 46 discard lowest, arrange to taste, roll hit points, determine class, determine spells, buy equipment, that sort of thing. You're kind of stuck. So I would definitely recommend, if you're going to do a sheaf of pre-gens, get yourself that for first edition AD&D. Sorry, obviously, with that caveat, get that Dungeon Master's Assistant, Volume 2, Characters and Treasure, and just crank out characters. In fact, make tons of characters well before then. Fill up a flash drive with characters.
Just Google Dungeons and Dragons character generator. There's 3 or 4 free ones out there.
Yeah, there's one on Dragon's Foot has one that has several different methods for generating a character.
I don't remember where it was. I came across one the other day that even asked you the edition you're generating a character for. It would do it for kind of any edition.
That's very cool.
I'll have to go find that one again and throw it on Twitter so people can see it. But it was pretty neat, because you could just click a button and say, I want a fighter, I want a human, and here you go, right? And it spits it out.
Yep.
So it doesn't have to take. It doesn't have to be like, and I see this a lot on Twitter and other places. And yes, I still call it Twitter. I know it's had its name.
I call it Twitter too. It'll be Twitter until I die. So
I see a lot of people sweating how long it's going to take to prep. It's, oh my God, it's going to take me days to prep for this. It doesn't have to do that, right? If playing becomes a major hassle, you're going to stop playing. So use these resources. They're free. They're out there. Don't waste a bunch of time going, oh my gosh, all my pre-gens have to have a 10-page backstory. They don't. Just give it a name and call it a day, and move on. It doesn't have to be as organized as Critical Role. It can be as loosey-goosey as you want. It's just for fun, right? It's not. Yep. There's no Dungeons and Dragons police that are going to run around and stop you from doing some shortcuts.
Right. Just do make sure you know your material. Don't be rocking up to your table taking the shrink wrap off of a module you've never read. Odds are it won't be as good of an experience as you'd like to give a large group.
If you're going to be the DM, especially, please read it before you show up.
Yeah, read it.
I would bet even Gygax did that, and he was Gary.
Yeah. Hey, it says it in all the intros to the modules that Gary wrote, and the guys, Alan Hammock and Len Lakofka and Lawshik and all those guys say, read this module carefully. Mm-hmm. They don't say, now that you've taken the shrink wrap off, set it aside until Saturday night and then pick it up and start running it again.
You think about another. Even Tom Hanks reads the script before he shows up on set, right?
An excellent point. So yeah, that I'm pretty much gassed there. So if anyone has any questions, now is your chance to ask. Me, Tim, both of us, neither of us, if you want to ask your fellows before we wrap up here, because it's coming up on 11 o'clock just about. So
while we're waiting on questions, just if anybody wants to, and Bill, I know we're not going to overlap on your time, and I would have asked you to come on, but it comes up too close to your time tomorrow night where you're usually playing. I am doing the first live stream on my channel ever tomorrow night. With Richard's going to be on, Harmony's going to be on, and Wick TV is going to be on. And I want to bust through this myth that somebody should gatekeep the hobby. So we're going to discuss gatekeeping in RPGs and hopefully put that to rest.
Well, what time is that, Tim? I'm going to have to watch that.
6 o'clock Eastern.
I'm just kidding.
6 o'clock. You can go on if you want, but I know you do a live stream, and I didn't want to come right up against it. At 6 o'clock your time, 5 o'clock mine. So,
all right.
If it ran long, I didn't want you to get doubled up on your time. So,
absolutely, send me that link. I want to share it out to the world. That sounds like a fascinating stream to watch. I don't. 6 o'clock is a dinner hour. I don't know if I'll have time to do that and get the get the rest of the party fed, but I would I would definitely love to, at the very least, have that on and hear what folks have to say. So please do share that with me, and I will share that. Guys, the easiest way to get that info is go subscribe to Tim's channel. I linked to it in the description. It's Timothy Imholt, right, Tim? It's just Timothy Imholt on
just at Timothy Imholt. I'm pretty easy to find. Same on Twitter, same on Instagram, same on everywhere. And with a last name like Imholt, I'm pretty easy to locate. So
yes, very much so, very much so. Twisted, I don't know if this is directed at me. Generally speaking, if I have a convention setting or an event setting, if the adventure takes place on another plane, I have, I've done my research and I've created the adventure about the plane. If a character is powerful enough that they say, I travel to the astral plane, I'll say, well, see ya. So just no clipped out of the map, buddy.
I actually was. It's funny somebody brings that up, because I was reading one of the history of Dungeons and Dragons things the other day. Mm-hmm. I think it was the one by Ben Riggs, the Slaying the Dragon. I've read it before, but I was rereading bits and pieces of it for something I'm working on. And at one point, TSR had so many universes they were working in. They had Gamma World, they had Dungeons and Dragons, they had Ravenloft, they had all these different sections they were working on. They were kind of bifurcating the RPG space, because they were kind of working against themselves, right? Like, people are over here in Ravenloft, but they're developing over here and over there. At one point, they tried to, and I'm going to have to find the section again, determine rules on how you could travel between those planes and how they were all related. And traveling between them was not simple.
No, we've done a deep dive on deities and demigods, and it goes now the original one, whether it's the unexpurgated or the later trimmed down versions, the travel between planes is explained in deities and demigods. Let's just set aside convention talk. Let's talk real about this. If a player character says, I'm going to go to this plane, and they don't have like a cubic gate that they know will take them there, a well of many worlds that they know opens there, or a wish handy to get them there, it's going to be dangerous to do that.
Two of the most powerful mages on the planet need to come help you or something. I mean, it's insane to try to do it. It's nuts.
And by the way, if you guys want the little Easter egg, little amuse bouche in tonight's live stream here, there is a book by is it Ellie Mosdet? I can't think. And now I have to look it up. It was right on the tip of my tongue. But if you're looking for the book that the Cubic Gate in AD&D is based on, it's the novel is called The Carnelian Cube. L. Fletcher Pratt and L. Sprague. I'm sorry, Fletcher Pratt and L. Sprague de Camp wrote The Carnelian Cube. Gary snatched that up and put it right into AD&D. In fact, the Cubic Gate is described as being a completely square carnelian gem. So now you know.
So since I don't see any questions coming up, I'm going to see if some people in the audience it has their head explode on this one. So see how old school people are. I was watching a live stream the other night, and the person hosting it allowed one of their guests to get away with, oh no, half elves weren't allowed in first edition Dungeons and Dragons.
Do what?
I know, right? I even was in the chat. I'm like, look, I'm looking at my first edition guide, and on page whatever it was, they're right there. And like, no, we were only talking that's for just halflings. You're wrong. I'm like, it says elves right there. I'm like, guys. And the other one that I was just sitting there going, what the hell? Was one of them said something to the effect of, oh, I'm tired of Wizards of the Coast, and we won't get into this too much, but what they said was they're trying to turn it into an IP with movies, and Gary would have never done that, except in 1982, Gary was out in Hollywood trying to turn it into a movie.
Yes.
I'm like, you people not read the history? There's like 19 history books out on this thing. Like, read one.
There's like an 8 or 10 minute chunk where Gary and I, in the interview that you can find right here on my channel, talk about him trying to get the D&D movie made. Oh my God.
82. It's like 82, 83 somewhere.
With Edgar Gross, John Borman, and Orson Welles to get the D&D movie made.
So my point to everybody is, when you watch some of the live streams and you watch some of the channels on YouTube, I'm in the social media business, okay? Let me explain this to you. Number one, they don't always know what they're talking about, okay? Number two, even if you tell them in the chat they're wrong and offer the page for them to go look at, they won't care. Number three, not everything in the world is some kind of crisis. The world will not stop revolving upon its axis. Things are not going to end. There's not another, whatever you want to call it today, a new bombshell release. There's just not. So remember, it's social media, and it is what it is. So, you have to take it for what it's worth. So don't get bent around the axle on some of that stuff, because, here's a very popular channel that had two that were just flat out wrong. And when I tried to put it in the thing, everybody was like, nope, you're wrong. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to leave. And move on, because it's just not worth it anymore. If people are willing to just be that incorrect and then just keep talking about it just for the sake of clicks, think about it for yourself for a minute, and put these things together. If you've been around for a while, some of these people are just full of crap. So don't be duped by numbers.
Exactly. Don't get pulled in the negativity. Concentrate on the positivity, and concentrate going out there, whether you're going to run a game online, whether you're going to run a game at a store event for yourself, whether you're going to run a game at home, whether you're going to run a game at a con, if it's for 2 people or 24 people, concentrate instead on having absolutely the best possible event you can for you and your players. And on that note, Tim, I think we will leave on the positive. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I appreciate it. Everybody check Tim out, subscribe to his channel. I will be back. I don't know if I can follow a stream like that tomorrow. I may take tomorrow off and have a cold beer.
You're welcome to join us, but I want to, this one, I know this one's going to be ugly, and I know you're trying to stay positive, because I'm tired of it. I'm tired of people saying I should be the gatekeeper. And as a serial entrepreneur, I can tell you that some of the people trying to be the gatekeeper are just absolutely wrong about what they're talking about. So You know, when you go on your channel and you blast the company that you're trying to be the gatekeeper for, and you say, I'm never going to buy one of their products again, and they need to listen to me because I'm the gatekeeper. I'm like, okay, what company would actually listen to you in that case? Let's have that discussion. So it's going to get negative. I know it's going to get negative. So I thought I'd let it give you the night off on that one.
Well, thank you so much. And I will bounce that back to you in our verbal game of two square and close by saying, don't be a gatekeeper, be a doorman. There's a difference. Know it. Peace, everybody. I'll see you around.
Have you seen my owl bear? It's to all the weirdos everywhere, in the woods and in the air. Have you seen my owl bear? Should I shave off all my hair? Bobs are all around. Some live in tunnels underground. Some are fat, some are rich, some are sleeping in a ditch. And you ride a crooked horse without a saddle, way off course, naked as a toad, all the way to Smoky Joe's. Have you seen the little creep driving fast in his little green Jeep? He smells like fish and brandy, but his rotten teeth look dandy. Take me to the show, I don't care if fast or slow. From action flicks to dancing things, just take me to the show.